Okay, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am James Rolfe. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at AIU. Welcome to our Chelmsford campus. I'd just like to say a couple of things before we get into the main panel discussion. First of all, a couple of admin points. So the event is being recorded and filmed as well. And secondly, we've got no fire drills planned. So if the fire alarm does go off, please head out of the fire exits there and out onto the car park behind us. And secondly, I just wanted to say a few words about AIU. Now, we're very proud of our roots here in Chelmsford and proud of our mission too, which is to transform lives through innovative, entrepreneurial and inclusive education and research. And I'll say a bit more about that as I go through the comments I want to make. Now, our Chelmsford campus is one of three here in the Eastern region. We have Cambridge and Peterborough as well, and we have a fourth in London. We have around 40,000 students at AIU, which makes us roughly the 12th biggest university in the country. We are, for example, the largest provider of graduates to the health and social care sector in the country, nurses, paramedics, operating department practitioners, midwives. And from the summer of next year, our first doctors will graduate as well. We opened the first medical school in Essex here on our Chelmsford campus back in 2018. We're also a leading provider of degree apprenticeships in the UK across all academic disciplines, and that's another innovative way of gaining a higher level education. It's very attractive to many of our students who come from all parts of Essex, and a good return for employers who pay the apprenticeship levy. Now, we're also very proud of our research and innovation programs. We have world-leading research in, for example, glaucoma and eye health, and also the positive impact of music therapy on people living with dementia. Now, we were recently ranked first in the UK and 20th in the world for the positive contribution our research makes to the UN Sustainable Development Goal for health and well-being. And our offer here is therefore a vital and proud part of the Chelmsford ecosystem. We set this out in our recently launched research and innovation strategy, which of course the City Council helped us to shape. That strategy focuses on four things: solving civic challenges for the local and global benefit. So, for example, our work with Gypsy and Roma communities on access to public services has been an important part of that. We deliver excellent research and innovation that has a real positive impact. So see my comments earlier about music therapy. That has had a huge and transformative experience on those people with dementia and those families and loved ones who care for people with dementia. We're developing and growing impactful staff and student knowledge exchange programs through internships, placements, lives briefs, and then onwards to graduate employment. And finally, we are fostering an inclusive, confident research culture through, for example, offering doctoral education with integrated professional experience. And our offer here in Chelmsford also includes our Arise Innovation Hub, just across there, to support high-growth companies in the health, well-being and medical technology sectors. Academic expertise, including the medical school, the Medical Technologies Research Centre and the Clinical Trials Unit, as well as engineering and built environment, computing and information systems academic disciplines. We also provide support to businesses, both new and established, through knowledge exchange and collaborative research projects. And we have engaged students who work on real issues with local employers through what we call live briefs. And then, of course, we have a ready supply of skilled graduates who not only receive a first-class education on their subject, but the wider skills that they need to be effective employees and members of their community. So once again, thank you for coming along. We're delighted to have this opportunity to host the event. We'd be delighted to talk to you later. And of course, we'd be delighted to see you again if you come back and use the fantastic facilities we have here on our Chelmsford campus. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen Robinson, and I'm immensely proud to be the leader of Chelmsford City Council. And I've got just 5 minutes to tell you about the huge opportunities here in Chelmsford. When there's so much going on, I might not fit it into 5 minutes, but I'll do my best. The City Council wants to work with you as partners in this endeavour as we create a great community that's addressing the big challenges of the day. As far as the opportunities are concerned, Chelmsford is a pro-growth authority, but that growth has got to be sustainable with investment in infrastructure. We've got a local plan that is delivering over 1,000 homes a year, and we want to step up our jobs target so that we are creating at least 1,000 new jobs a year, and we want to work with you to do that. Now, Chelmsford is well known for its great retail offer, but it's less well known for its innovation and technology history. 100 years ago, just last week, was the very first radio broadcast using Marconi engineers here in Chelmsford. But today, sort of 100 years on, one of the Marconi successors, E2V or Teledyne E2V, just up the road, is designing and building lenses of intensely high-tech nature on most of the satellites that are floating around planet Earth. So we've had this proud technology history, and we want to grow that for the future. And one of the things which we had to pause for COVID reasons, the Skills Festival for young people, organised by the City Council, we'll be restarting that next year because we want young people of the district to be part of this journey. In 2012, our late Queen created Chelmsford as her Diamond Jubilee city, and it put Chelmsford on the map. And in the 10 years since then, we have continued to grow. Chelmsford is a connected city, close to London, close to 2 airports, 2 seaports, the beautiful coast. We think Chelmsford is a great place to live, work, and relax, and we hope you do too, and we want you to be part of that. The City Council is growing its own capacity to work with those of you in the development industry so that we can be part of this team together that is growing Chelmsford for the future. For example, we've just created a new team in the planning policy team who are working specifically to develop and build out the garden community. The Chelmsford Garden Community is a 15-minute neighbourhood which is low carbon, building strong communities. And our staff want to work with you as in the development industry, and you'll hear from some of those later on. But it's not just about houses or industry, it's about creating a great community that's addressing the challenges of today and tomorrow. Climate crisis, of course, is the #1 challenge facing us on planet Earth. And as part of that, we have a programme to make Chelmsford City Council carbon neutral by 2030 as we work towards making the rest of the district carbon neutral. And we have an active action plan. And it's not just because that's good for the climate, but that's because it's good to make a great place to live. So your staff will think that it's a great place to live and bring up families. And there are great opportunities to work with the 2 universities that we have in Chelmsford to grow an army of low-carbon, high-tech future graduates. So if you're thinking of investing in Chelmsford, you'll know that our staff at the City Council in Planning and Economic Development want to work with you too. That we are creating a great community, and as part of that, one of the projects we're working on is what we're calling our cultural living room that my colleague, Councillor Goldman, is working on at the theatre, which is part of our improved cultural offer. We've recently launched a new cultural strategy and a cultural development trust, because it's all about building communities, not just new houses, so that the people that work for you and want to work for you in future here in Chelmsford think that this is a great place. I mean, we've got 17 green flag parks, for example, and lots of open spaces. So Chelmsford is a fabulous place to live as well as work. Now, this is a pivotal moment in Chelmsford's history. There are major opportunities that you'll hear about later on this evening. And we want you to be involved in that next part of Chelmsford's journey. We want you to be part of the Chelmsford growth strategy and be part of Chelmsford's proud story as we continue to put Chelmsford on the map. So there are huge opportunities for innovative, imaginative businesses that want to grow. There are huge opportunities for you here in Chelmsford. We want you to join us on that journey, to come to Chelmsford, which is a great place to live and work. So please join us on this journey as we create a greener, fairer community right here in Chelmsford at the leading edge of technology. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson, and thank you, James Rolfe. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Toby Fox. I'm the Managing Director at 3Fox, which is the marketing agency for councils and the organiser of this event. And when we were organising this event, our key objective was to help you make connections with each other, with the council, and with the council's partners, to stimulate investment and growth in Chelmsford. But Chelmsford is after a particular kind of growth, as we've heard. What do we really mean by that? And what opportunities does that open up for you? And what does Chelmsford want from you? We want to explore those questions with you during the rest of this afternoon. So later, we're going to have plenty of opportunity for you to mix and talk one-on-one, one-to-one with the council, with the council's partners, with each other, to explore those questions. But first, we really want to stimulate your conversation a bit. So we've asked some fascinating speakers to help us explore how Chelmsford is acting as a responsible city, how it's unlocking its capacity to create effective future-facing business ecosystem and built environment to really deliver social value and sustainable development. So to that end, it's a pleasure to introduce to you this evening in alphabetical order our panel who are going to speak next, beginning with Nick Evely, who is Chief Executive at Chelmsford City Council, and Councillor Marie Goldman, who is Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Connected Chelmsford at Chelmsford City Council, and Dr. Alison Hurst, who is Associate Professor of Organisation Studies at Anglia Ruskin University, and Dr. Meena Lamy, who is Associate Professor in Sustainable Enterprise at Anglia Ruskin University, and Andrew Taylor, who is Group Planning Director at Countryside. So this panel really demonstrates, ladies and gentlemen, some of the strengths that Chelmsford has in city vision, in research, in development partners, and how those strengths support each other and enhance each other to create quite a unique investment proposition. So we're going to underline that investment proposition, I hope, by starting with a high-level conversation about some of the concepts around this notion of a responsible city and what they mean. So I'm going to hand over to start us off on that with Dr. Alison Hurst. Alison, tell us a little bit about your work, if you would, and how profoundly what we want from cities has changed over the last couple of years and how that might guide Chelmsford in its growth in the future.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Alison and I study workplaces, and I'm interested in how workplaces shape the way that we work, you know, how particular designs can make us interact and work together differently. I'm interested in how buildings, you know, what they communicate about the organisations to the outside world. And I'm interested in how work buildings shape the neighbourhoods and towns and cities where they're located. I'm going to talk today about offices mainly. Obviously, there's all sorts of different workplaces which are very significant and important, but offices have a big impact on the configuration of our city centres, and also, as we all know, the life of an office, the everyday life of an office has changed quite radically over the last 2 years. So the question that I've decided to address is how we can think of workplaces as things that actually foster productive, rewarding relationships between colleagues, how they can help people to learn and develop careers, and at the same time, how do we keep and kind of crystallize some of the gains that we have made in the pandemic by reducing the amount of commuting that people do. So that's how I interpreted the overall question of the city. So anyway, let's do a little trip. Let's go on a little trip to Bishopsgate. You can see here this photograph where I was last Wednesday, and I was a guest there of my doctoral student, Dan Wakelin, who is the director of a workplace consultancy organisation. And we were having there a meeting between himself, some of his colleagues, and their clients from Europe and the United States. And we were considering roughly this question, how can we, given the changes that have happened, what do we do about office buildings? How can we make them work socially and environmentally? And we're confronted with this big percentage there, this interesting statistic that all over the UK, the occupancy rate of office buildings is 40%. So that's the case in London here. It's the case in Cambridge, where I live. And it's been pretty stable like that for at least the past year or so, and you can measure it in different ways on like how much time people say they spend in the office and how much time they expect to spend. So we've got a figure here that we need to think about. It's a little bit higher in Europe, it's about 55%, but there we are, 40% occupancy in the UK. Now I'm going to look meaningfully at Natasha now. Oh, great. So what's happening so far? What are employers doing? Well, there is a spectrum of responses. So we've got well-publicised examples at the ends of the polls. So at one end, we've got the idea, we say, well, everybody works remotely. Offices are too expensive assets. Let's divest of them altogether. And we will, we know we have the technology, and so we'll all work remotely. And at the other end of the spectrum, there are organisations that say, no, we're not having that. You must all come back to the office and you must attend the office at least 40 hours a week. So there are problems with both of those responses. So if we let everybody work remotely, then we lose opportunities to form face-to-face relationships. And in particular, young people and new joiners don't get the same sorts of opportunities to learn and be mentored. And bit by bit, people's psychological contract with the organisation weakens, and we kind of lose the gel that holds the organisation together. And the opposite end of the spectrum also has its problems. People resent now being sort of, they see in their words, they will be forced to come in every day. And that the model bespeaks of a low trust idea, that the idea that if we kind of can't see people present in the workspace, then they must be skiving off or doing the washing or something like that. So the interesting space is in the middle, where we see a variety of responses, some of which are existing and some of which employers are just thinking about. So we've got many models of hybrid working that organisations are doing now. We're probably doing them ourselves. And some ways of supporting people to work in other places, in sort of third spaces, if you like, not the formal workplace, not the home, but elsewhere. We've got a lot of offices being converted into agile spaces in recognition that there is hybrid working. And we've also got a lot of prevarication. So a lot of organisations are holding off doing anything because there are too many sources of uncertainty. At the moment, there's the general feeling that because of lockdown, because it's become so firmly entrenched that now we know how to use the technology has improved, somehow the balance of power has shifted to the employee. Okay, but people are thinking, well, maybe with the changing economic climate, that will shift back again. So people will be more inclined to sort of show up in person. There's a lot of sources of uncertainty. And so workplace consultants are saying things, well, we don't want to recommend a new design for something that's going to be mothballed in 6 months' time. So there's action and there is also inaction. Okay, so I want to spend a couple of minutes just thinking about what are the issues from employees' points of view. And I want to start by saying that I think there is some sort of some of the conversations around this about why employees want to behave as they do are a little bit off-centre. So there's some sort of arguments that, well, introverted people don't want to come into the office, or it's their personality, or it's to do with a kind of a wanting to spend more time at home. So there's a kind of little bit of suspicion there. I think that the central conversation is around the jobs that we design as employers and we give to our staff members. And all of those jobs have designed into them specific needs for how much they need to interact with other people, how much time they need to spend getting their heads down and ticking tasks off a task list, and the intensity, the amount of work that we give them. I think that is the central consideration that, if you like, doesn't determine, but it influences what people need from a workspace. And most people, as they always have done, want to do their job well. So what they want is to be able to access a workspace that enables them to do their job well. And there are some specific needs of specific groups of people. So new joiners and young people need support for learning. They're also the sorts of people that are least likely to have a good workspace at home that they can access. And, the pandemic has changed our ideas about what's acceptable in terms of a commute. People now regard it more explicitly as a cost. So this was an American guest at the meeting that I attended. And to him, it's a waste. It's 2 hours and $50. And furthermore, which he didn't mention, it's 2 hours, $50, and however many kilos of CO2 that needn't be spent into the atmosphere. So we know that we have to reduce the carbon footprint of our operations decisively and quickly. So we need to look for opportunities to do that. Okay. Thank you. So where does this leave us? Well, this is where I think it leaves us. I think we all need to think collectively, like we're doing today, and at a bigger scale. We need to conceptualize the workspace, not just as this sort of set of buildings or the campus or the laboratories or whatever it is that we want to attract people to, but we need to think about it in a more dispersed fashion, because that's how our workforces see it. I think that we need to support people to work nearer to where they live, at least some of the time. That is a positive development. And also to think, therefore, if people aren't together all the time, what can we think of? Can we devise meaningful ways of bringing people together? So an organisation in the Netherlands, for example, just simply has a rota. That's one way of doing it. Can we think of bringing people together for specific mentoring or career development or learning opportunities? Different ideas for different organisations, perhaps. If we do office refurbs, it needn't produce a lot of rubbish. Typically associated with producing waste in terms of office furniture waste and electrical waste. This is a little business idea for somebody. It's an American company that provides recycled office furniture. So I don't know if we have anybody in our county that does that, but that would be an opportunity. So, for example, Paramount have recently refurbished their office and they had all second-hand furniture. We have second-hand clothes, second-hand furniture. And finally, let's think specifically about the needs of young people and prioritise them. Let's put them first. The problems that we sort of mentioned about space are all experienced most acutely by the young, who probably can't afford to live in city centres, won't have a good workspace at home, and are most worried about climate change. I've been peripherally involved in a little project in Cambridge called Cambridge Ahead, which is a collaboration of employers and the local authority and others to think about how it is going to manage the expansion of the city. And one really positive thing that they have done is they've set up something called the Young Advisory Committee. So, of course, first I lazily thought that that would be somebody called Young, and because it's Cambridge, it would be Lady Young or Lord Young. No, it's for young people. So it's an interest group of young people. Under 35 is what counts as young these days. And it consults with them regularly on what their needs are in terms of working and the space of working. Our little photograph there is a few yards away from the Bishopsgate location where I was before. It's a co-working space. It's where the Workspace Consulting Organisation is actually based. You can see it's kind of a bit retro and beta, and it is full of young people working. I had to take the photograph in that direction because otherwise I would be taking a photograph of too many identifiable people. But this is a very good way of, I suppose, accommodating the need of enabling people to work nearer to where they live and giving them a sort of social hub where they can get that contact. Oh, just one more. Acknowledgements. My colleagues.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Alison. We've got lots of opportunities for you in the audience to ask questions or make observations about what the panel is saying. So if anybody's got anything they'd like to say or ask in reference to what Alison's been talking about, put your hand up and we'll get a mic to you. But in the meantime, while you're doing that, while you're thinking through how you want to address this, I'm going to turn to Marie first, if I may, and just ask if what you've heard from Alison there, that sort of redefines Chelmsford. We've been talking about affordability and co-working space and so on. Does that redefine how we think of Chelmsford as a place to live and work?
I think it makes it, sorry, thanks for the question and thanks for that very interesting presentation. I think it makes it more important than ever that we are creating a city and growing a city which is a city where people want to spend time. I think if we're talking about people not spending, essentially 2/3 of their waking life away from the place that they live, then the place that they live has to be somewhere where they enjoy spending time and they have lots of opportunities. So I think that makes it really important to focus on what Chelmsford has to offer. And certainly when we're planning things, we need to think about, well, how are people now going to be spending their time? So rather than, going away to London, maybe, to spend, 8 hours of their day, 10 hours of the day, 12 hours of their day, maybe go and see a show afterwards. How can we encourage people to spend their time and their money, essentially, in Chelmsford? And what are the opportunities for them here? Stephen mentioned earlier that we're focusing at the moment, I'm focusing a lot of my time on some of the cultural activities which are in my portfolio at Chelmsford City Council. And we are creating this cultural living room through our refurbishment of the theatre that we're doing at the moment. But it's not just about buildings. It's about a whole experience across the whole of the council. And it's really important, and I'm going to talk a bit more about it later, but for me it's really important that we recognise that we can't do it all by ourselves. And so it's working in partnership and making sure that we look at our cultural strategy across the board and get other people involved in that. We don't know all the answers. We don't have all the answers to everything. So how do we engage with people? And part of it is through events like this. I'm absolutely delighted to see so many people here this afternoon because we want to engage with you. We want to hear the feedback that's coming from our community, from our business community, from our ordinary residents, from visitors to our city as well. And I think all of that is really important to engage with to make sure that we are addressing a very big shift in how society works.
Thanks, Marie. And Andrew, what are the implications of what we've heard for designing residential, for building a new community from scratch in terms of how we approach how people kind of live and work and play in the same spaces now?
Well, it's not just about the residential, because the new communities that we're looking at creating is not just the residential, it's talking about the recreation side of it, but it's also the commercial or the office or the retail spaces. And some of those points, the flux that we're going through at the moment, the uncertainty of what things might be in next year, let alone, 5, 10, 20 years' time or even 50 years' time, that's quite difficult to plan for. So, there are more people, yes, working at home, therefore the spaces, the configuration within homes needs to change to be able to facilitate that. When we started off, many people not able to close a door on the noise that was outside because too many open plan living rooms, for example. But thinking about some of those things when you're replanning, or thinking about the local hubs. You talked about the 15-minute. Stephen talked about the 15-minute community. I think earlier on, thinking about those hubs where people actually might want to not necessarily be at home to work, but go somewhere to be able to have a space where you still have the people around the social side, but still close to home. Or thinking about the type of employment that you offer in terms of new places. Are offices the way to go? You're talking about occupancy rates, or are you looking at a different type of employment offer in terms of those new communities?
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions from the audience yet? Got plenty of opportunities coming up. Okay, we'll move on then. So I'm in danger of like a gross oversimplification here, but we've talked about a recycled furniture project. Mina, can you tell us a little bit about your work on circular economies and how understanding and creating circular economies is important to helping a growing city grow responsibly?
Thank you. Can I get the next slide? So you're right. I will straight away start to talk about that. It's not about recycling. It is about recycling as well, but it's much more. So I think personally that a sustainable city should be also a circular one. So I would look sectors that would become or use circular economy principles. And what are they then? First of all, we are looking to use all the raw materials really carefully, and we will try to use them as long as possible. So the recycling comes much later. So design is one of the things, designing everything so that it lasts well, it uses as little as possible, and it works well, and it can be perhaps changed a little bit, and so on. And this economical system can be used in any sector. I've been working with local areas in metal industry, for instance, and they are looking circular possibilities. Also, it's not just about businesses, it's also the citizens and consumers, because everyone needs to make this work. Can I have the next slide? It might be, anyway, concentrate on the picture there, because I know it might look very weird. It is about, it's an example from Finland. So we've looked several companies and how they're building circular economy. The old companies, the old and large ones, tend to struggle with certain areas, and there are business opportunities for new small businesses to close these loops, which means that they use waste as raw materials, for instance, or they do something else that the big businesses can't do. And then there are sort of established SMEs, and then they tend to focus more on services. Anyhow, if I can get the next picture, building these ecosystems or circular economy systems means that businesses needs to work differently comparing to the system now. So there needs to be really high level of trust. It can perhaps happen here when people are starting to talk with each other and maybe finding ways of working together. I personally think that it also needs local authorities to help businesses to build these ecosystems. And often academia can help with that too, because they can help with the innovations, and the innovations tend to happen where all these sectors come together. So high level of trust is needed when these ecosystems are built. Coordinated actions, and that's often something that academia can help with, because they are sort of slightly outside, so they can provide some sort of neutral space to companies to come together and start to think differently how they operate and how these networks start to evolve. Also, shared creation of knowledge can happen there. And I personally think that this size of city as Chelmsford is would be a nice place to work towards sustainability and build real local circular economy. Thank you.
Thanks, Mina. Just a couple of follow-up questions on that. So, firstly, can you give us an example of one of those instances where you described a small company almost feeding off another company, feeding off its waste? So, a business created in order to help that circularity in the economy.
Well, I've seen quite a lot of small companies using, for instance, let's say leather waste or from the furniture companies, or I've seen also companies using construction waste, so they make new products from the waste. That's their raw material. But also some big companies might start to think about their businesses differently and think, okay, can I use myself this waste material to build something new? And there are, of course, new markets then arriving. So you were talking a little bit about upcycling. So, for instance, furniture that can be reused. Sometimes it's useful to perhaps rebuild something, but sometimes it might take too much money and energy, so it doesn't always work. There's always still this economical side as well.
Thanks, Mina. And my second question was, so you've called for local authorities to help start this process and to guide it, and you say that Chelmsford is an ideally sized city to begin a process like this. So where should the council start? What's the first step to creating this circular economy?
So it depends really what you think about, or what is the easiest way of starting it. I think often the start is in the waste sector, but actually I would go somewhere else, somewhere more sort of further away from the recycling sector and start to think about differently. But it should be smallish sector perhaps, but something where you are strong and where you have more than just one company, because otherwise you are just consulting perhaps one company. But I think here we have several companies in, so this is a perfect start.
Yeah, so audience, if anyone in the audience would like to stick up their hand and tell us about examples of circularity that they've started working on or they could see opportunities for, hands up and the mic will come your way. If you've got any questions on either of the themes that we've been discussing so far on workplace change and circularity, again, we're happy to take your questions. While you consider that, I'm going to turn to Nick and ask Nick how you respond to Mina's words on creating a circular economy. Is that a priority for the council? Have you examined it at all? Is that a road you're going down?
Well, I mean, we haven't examined it to date. I mean, one of our key pledges is to be a greener council, so we are very keen to get involved in recycling. I think for us, we'd be very interested in any projects that people can come forward with. I think I see our role perhaps more as a facilitator to work with others to help develop the circular economy, but it's not something that to date we've actually given too much thought to at this stage.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, so I've been working with some cities in Finland who had built a roadmap for the whole area, how they become circular. So maybe that's one way of thinking about it.
Absolutely. I mean, if you could share that with us, it's certainly something we'd be interested in. It's just we haven't explored it at this stage.
So, audience, perhaps let's just get a show of hands, Stephen, just before we come back to you. Put your hands up in the audience if you'd like to be part of a programme of investigating how Chelmsford might take this idea forward. If you'd like your organisations to be part of it. Okay, well, I think we might drop you a line after this event. That's a good, what's that, at 25% of the audience?
That's good.
Yeah, excellent. Stephen.
I just wanted to pick up with both the last two comments. I mean, as you said, Mina, that Chelmsford is as a city, but we think we're a small enough that there are strong connections across the whole city, that it's not isolated neighbourhoods. We're large enough to have impact, but small enough that you can see it as a single unit in many respects. So I think we've got that opportunity. We also have a mix of urban and rural, and a lot of, as Nick said, we're a facilitator. We're making connections. For example, a lot of I mentioned earlier when I spoke about the high-tech companies in Chelmsford. We've got a number of high-tech companies in Chelmsford who didn't know each other existed until Nick set up the Tech Ambassadors Group just over 3 years ago, and we're sitting around the table, and that's led to some really interesting collaboration, and obviously a bit of a hiatus, COVID, etc. So we need to get back to that. But there are real opportunities there for the City Council to bring people together, either literally or metaphorically, around a table.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Mina. Okay, we're going to move the conversation on to our next panellist, Marie Goldman. Marie, we've been given a glimpse of what growth in a responsible city might be like. We've talked a little bit around some of the principles of it. How far, as a council, how far are you willing to take that vision, and how do you present it as an opportunity, an economic opportunity, rather than just a cost to everyone?
Yeah, and that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you do anything without just focusing on the cost? And obviously the elephant in the room is that we've got a rather large budget announcement coming tomorrow from central government, and that's not going to be good news for any of us, frankly. We don't know what's going to be in it, but it's probably going to make all of our lives quite a bit harder. It's going to make business quite a bit harder, probably. And that's something that councils have to deal with as well. But I don't think opportunity is just about money. I think opportunity is a lot about relationships that you forge with other people. And I don't think there ever was a time actually when councils could do everything themselves. But I think there was a time when councils probably had a bit more flexibility to be able to do more things just by themselves. But I don't think that was the right approach, actually. And I think working together with other organisations is actually far stronger and provides far more opportunities than we would ever get by trying to work alone, because we don't have the answers to everything. And we know that other people are specialists in their areas, other organisations are specialists in their areas and have that expertise. And it's only by bringing people together that we can actually make a real difference and make real progress on what we want to achieve. Now, I was speaking to somebody earlier about kind of the cultural offering in Chelmsford, and I mentioned just now about how we want to make sure that people want to enjoy spending time in Chelmsford, and that's really important for businesses because you want your workforce to enjoy spending time where they work as well. And I was talking to somebody and talking about what does success look like? How will we know when we've succeeded? And I actually don't think that success is a destination. I think it's a pathway. I think it's when you are doing well, that is a successful pathway, but you never reach success as a destination because there's always something different you can do. There's always more that you can do, and the world always evolves and things change. We've seen that over the last 2 years, with the pandemic. We couldn't have predicted how the world would have changed, and yet it has dramatically. And what success would have looked like if you'd asked me maybe 5 years ago is probably very, very different to what I think the successful pathway looks like today. But one thing's for certain is I know that it's about working together. And I also, I think one of the things I wanted to talk about very briefly, because I want the time for the other panelists to come in as well, because there should be much more of a discussion. And also, I know that you want the time to network with each other. And that's one of my points, really, is that networking is something that we can help facilitate as a council. And we are very, very good at that, actually. And one of the things that we can do is forge those relationships and introduce businesses to each other, introduce you to different organizations, introduce you to different ways of doing things. We're already doing that through things that we've set up ourselves, and Stephen mentioned just now the tech ambassadors. I see some members of that group in the room today. And that's a really important way that we are allowing people to network with each other and work with people who are doing maybe slightly similar things, in that there's some very techie stuff, fantastic, exciting techie stuff going on in Chelmsford. But as Stephen said, a lot of those organisations didn't know what they were doing. And yet through the Tech Ambassadors Group, where we meet and we discuss what's happening in Chelmsford, what people are doing in their organisations, it gives an opportunity for people to forge those relationships. And I know that there are new partnerships that have started up exactly on the back of that, which wouldn't have happened otherwise because people didn't know that what each other was doing and were working in their own silos. And that's a strength of an organisation like the council, that because we have such a broad overview of what's going on, not just in Chelmsford, but right the way across Essex. And another example of that is where we are working with something called the North Essex Economic Board. And I'm honoured to be able to represent Chelmsford City Council on the NEB, as it's snappily titled. We're looking for another name, but we haven't quite found one yet, so the NEB is the way we are. And that's 6 district councils from the north and mid part of Essex, plus representation from Essex County Council, where we're working together. And that's exactly what the public might expect us to be doing as councils, working together. But you'd be surprised how little that actually happens sometimes. But we have to work together, and we have to do it better. And that's exactly what we're doing. And Chelmsford is leading the way on a lot of those conversations. But we want you to be part of that. And part of the importance of events like this is to give you the opportunity, as businesses, as organisations, further education, higher education, whatever sector you're working in, to have those opportunities to meet each other and to talk to us about how we can help you meet each other and grow those relationships. So when somebody asks me what success actually is, and if somebody forces me to give an answer, my answer is this: I will know that we are succeeding when somebody is trying to work out what's the best thing to do, where's the best place to go. And when they answer, I don't know, but Chelmsford has some good stuff going on, let's see what Chelmsford's doing, then I know that we'll be on the right path to success. And I really hope that you'll join us on that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Marie. Very rousing. Let's just do a quick poll. We've got the Invest in Chelmsford team are in the room tonight, so get your pens ready. Put your hands up, audience, if you would like the council to facilitate more networking opportunities. So hands up. Okay, that's almost everyone. Okay, keep your hands up, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Woman in the second row here, who would you like to network with? Developers and housing associations. Okay, anyone else got anything to add to that? Wesley.
We've invested obviously in Chelmsford by buying the Meadows shopping centre, and obviously part of our journey is to make sure that we go on this journey with everyone in the room. So obviously picking up on your comments, Marie, we've met with you a few weeks ago, and just from that one conversation, we've met with Nick, we've met with Stephen, and we are getting a greater handle on what Chelmsford wants to be. You know, and the only way we can improve and understand and include everyone in that is to engage as much as possible. So events like tonight are really important for us. That's why we're here. Unfortunately, our director is ill, so he can't be here to be on the panel tonight. But for us, obviously, the more events like this you hold, the more opportunities we have to kind of really incorporate as many people into the new emerging site as we possibly can.
Okay, Wesley, thanks a lot. Wesley's from the Dominus Group. I failed to ask your company, I'm sorry. You're from? Louder? Red Loft. Thank you very much. Anyone else got anything to add on networking? Because we've got Invest in Chelmsford team scribbling down what you're requesting to make it happen in the coming weeks or months. Good. Okay, Andrew, how do you respond? You've got the weight of the whole of the private sector development industry on your shoulders, represented on the panel today. How do you respond to what Marie said about collaboration?
Well, thank you. I will talk for myself, if possibly Countryside as well. I think when we are looking at places to invest, when we're looking at what we develop, and then even the offer that we're putting to our customers, whoever they may be, we're also looking at the place, aren't we? We're looking at selling the place. It's not just a piece of real estate. It's not just a house we're selling. It's a home. It's the place where people are going to live, probably bring up family, change, work, grow old. And therefore, it's looking at that entire place. So therefore, that joint working, broader than just getting planning consent and getting on site, is very important, which is one of the reasons we're here today to sponsor this event, one of the reasons that we've previously committed to sponsor the sort of the youth careers fair in the past, thinking about the way that the development sector and the council and other public sector bodies work together to create a thriving place. Because that, from our perspective, selfishly to some extent, is how we will sell houses, how we will create that new community, how our residents, as they move in, see the benefit of coming here, see the benefit of living in this place and investing and making their future. So that partnership working is incredibly important, both for us, but also for our future residents to be able to integrate into the community.
Thanks, Andrew. Nick, we've talked about collaboration, about the openness of the council to working with partners and the need for that kind of working. Quite often, talking to people in the private sector, you get the response that it's very difficult to talk to the council. They don't have any time, they don't answer the phone, there aren't enough people, and so on. What are you doing as a local authority to ensure that your team are as accessible as possible to partners in the private sector?
Yeah, I mean, we've got an incredibly accessible team. If you talk to our economic development team, I think, they mix with businesses right across Chelmsford and beyond. Our planning team are very accessible. I think in terms of our relationship with business, I mean, I remember when Miles came to see me to set up the Tech Ambassadors, actually, so I can't take full credit for that. I think it was a joint initiative. But actually, our aim is to get out there and meet with businesses, and our doors are always open. We're very keen to work with you. We're very happy to have meetings with you. Our teams, both through planning, economic development, all of our bodies are very keen to work with you. So all our staff actually are completely accessible. They respond quickly to any requests that come through to the council. So if anybody wants to work with us, we'd be very happy to meet with you.
Great stuff. Invest in Chelmsford. Can you put your hands up so everyone can see who you are? If you're out there, all down in this corner here. So grab them when we finish this discussion. They're there for you to access. Thanks very much. Anyone else on the panel want to pick up on any of the themes that we've covered so far? Anyone in the audience want to respond to what they've heard? Yes.
Hello, thank you. I am a co-founder of Vision Co-working Spaces in Chelmsford. We opened in 2016 and we've been running at full capacity since we opened our doors. I hear a lot about support and creating hybrid working and workspaces. I've noticed that other authorities like Stevenage, Tunbridge Wells, they're being very forthcoming and working with other co-working providers in creating these spaces. But I'm just wondering what type of support is there out there for businesses like mine that is the only one in Essex that running at full capacity, and we've continually grown through COVID and we're still looking for more space, but we can only grow as fast as our pocket will allow us to. So if you're looking to invest and look at certain companies, isn't it right to look at companies that are on your own doorstep that are running full capacity and doing exactly what they said?
Do you want to pick up on that? Yeah. Marie?
Pick up on that. First of all, I'd like to say it's absolutely brilliant that you're growing. I mean, that's a really good success story that's right here in the centre of Chelmsford. So, that's really, really good to hear. The second thing I would say is that absolutely come and talk to our Invest in Chelmsford, our economic development team. Come and speak to them about your specific requirements. And that would go for anybody who's in this room and just wants to talk, kind of one-on-one with us and say, well, actually, no, I've got these specific requirements. This is what I'm looking to do. Because no business is the same as another business, right? You'll have different requirements, you'll have different methods of operating. And you're absolutely right, we do want to invest in Chelmsford ourselves, and that's what we are doing. As a council, there's a limit to how much money we have, and that is a very real issue right now. It has been an issue for many years and it's been getting worse, but it's got catastrophically worse in the last few days alone. And you will have seen the reports of councils across the country run by any political party. This is not a political statement at all, really, really struggling with funds at the moment. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't, again, do that enabling work and put you in contact with other sources of potentially of investment. Sorry, I didn't catch that. And support in other ways, absolutely. I mentioned earlier the North Essex Economic Board. One of the things we're doing with that is we're pooling together some of our resources. So we get grants potentially that have come from central government. So during COVID, we had something called the Additional Restrictions Grant, the ARG. Again, these snappy titles. But rather than kind of each council trying to do something with that individually, we pooled some of that money together and provided grants and supports to businesses across a range of skills and activities which you can access, and we'd love to point you in those directions if any of those would be useful to you. So do come and talk to us, I guess is the answer.
We're just going to move the conversation on, but I'll come back to you in a second, if that's okay, because I just want to bring Andrew into the conversation now to talk a little bit about Chelmsford Garden Community and the art of the possible for a developer in creating a new place that addresses all these various needs. We're hearing about the needs of local businesses, we're hearing about the needs of local people, the needs of the local authority to attract more investment and growth. What's the art of the possible for you, given the huge shifts in the world at the moment?
Well, very quickly on a small pen portrait of Chelmsford Garden Community, and I should say mainly because there's one person in the audience, that it's not just countryside, it's also Greycoat and Tom are going to be working with us, and our partner is L&Q, so it's not just us. But Chelmsford Garden Community, as mentioned earlier, local plan allocation, around 5,500 new houses, get the terminology right, I'll be told off by Jeremy. But over 9 hectares of employment land, 20 kilometres of multifunctional greenways, 3 new country parks, and a range of other things, a creation of that community. But this is over a huge period of time. This is up to 2040 odd. So this is a huge endeavour and looking at this. So part of the challenge is looking at that future, looking at what would, Marie talked about what happened over the last couple of years, what's going to happen over the next 20 odd years. And that's really challenging to try and get something now. And we're working jointly with both Chelmsford and Essex on the development framework document, the master plan for the scheme, and trying to fix certain things but also provide greater flexibility to the fact that we know that things will change over the life of that project. And if you're very boringly planning law, there's various cases recently that mean it might be a complete nightmare to try and change it partway through a scheme. So actually some of these challenges are really real for us as a developer, getting the certainty we want, but the flexibility to change and develop over time. But thinking about the vision we want for a place, this is a shared vision. We have a development board that oversees this, which Nick and Stephen and other people sit on, as well as the county council, overseeing at that high level, both setting the vision, setting the strategy, that then together we will deliver both from a development, the physical part, but then the fact that the council, whether that's be the parish council locally or the city or the county, will take on some of those responsibilities in terms of helping to create a community. Because we're not just about building a building that people will live in, it's about creating that community in the place that people want to come and live in. I was talking earlier about social value and the broader aspect of what we can do, which is partly the slightly different extrapolation of the circular economy or circular community, but thinking about the role we play in helping people create those new community activities, the social value we can put in through investment, whether that's investment and training locally, whether that's employing local firms talking about, or whether that's through the employment area or the community facilities. Thinking about how we will play that long-term stewardship of a place, how we get people who are going to move there actually connected into some control, some governance, some oversight of that long-term stewardship of a place. Do they actually feel connected? Because these places can be islands in themselves. If you look at a place, a town, a city that's developed over many hundreds of years, it evolves and changes, whereas a new community almost has to go through that growing pain very, very quickly to get to a stage where people interact, people know their neighbours, people will be able to have those conversations. And without some facilitation, both from the development industry and from the council, that doesn't happen. But there are certain things that we do need as part of that support. And it's about that clarity of vision, clarity of decision making, clarity of what's required to be placed. You know, that's why having an upstate local plan is absolutely fantastic. Having the joint working with the council on the development framework document, having the councillors sitting and chief exec sitting on the steering group to have that senior buy-in is really important to us and to our partners in terms of having the confidence to invest in the both in terms of moving through the planning application process, but then invest actually to deliver on the ground. And that's clarity, the senior leadership, the clear direction from a political angle about what wants to be delivered and the aspirations is vitally important for us. But also links to the pragmatism of we need to get this thing going. We need to make sure we get it on the ground. It's all very well having amazing ideas if actually they're not based in a realism of what's going to work on the ground and deliver it, whether that's a physical issue or, I don't want to talk about viability, but a viability, a money issue, and you talked about issues of constraint, build costs are going through the roof, all those sorts of issues. We know that the next few years are going to be difficult, and therefore there is that realism that needs to be built into some of these projects as well, which I'm pleased to say we have that realism here. But about that pragmatism of getting on and jointly solving issues as they arrive to enable us to actually deliver on the ground.
Thanks, Andrew. Again, audience, you've got the opportunity to ask questions, so if you put your hand up, a mic will come your way. But while you're thinking about that, we've got one up in the top corner. I just want to ask Stephen. Stephen, we've heard how there's a board created, there's lots of consultation, lots of engagement. Countryside are a fantastic partner, so I'm sure you've got a really wonderful scheme coming forward. But on the off chance that there's someone in the audience who's thinking on the same sort of scale, big development coming Chelmsford's way. How much do you see something like this as a headache, and how much do you see it as an opportunity, given that the first reaction of anybody locally to something like this landing is going to be, oh my God, what does that mean for me?
I said earlier, we're a pro-growth authority, but that's sustainable growth, and sustainable means that's about growing the community. So building communities, not just houses, is very much on what our agenda is about. The mistake that maybe councils, maybe developers make is letting because the existing community see it as an imposition, but the new residents who desperately need houses have no one to advocate for them because they don't live there yet, but they will do. So some of the people who will live in the garden community probably live in London. A lot of them live in Chelmsford already, and in fact, some of them have recently started going to school, for example. So, the youngsters in our high schools will be buying some of Countryside's other developers are available houses. I don't need to do Andrew's job for him, but they're talking about partnerships with other organisations, and I think that's really important. I also wanted to pick up on one thing, which to illustrate how we're being flexible as we've been evolving the master plan for the garden community and taking on board the need to be more flexible work-life balance. Instead of having one large business park in the garden community, we kind of split it up into smaller neighbourhood centres, so that there were essentially 4 villages in this garden community. One of them slightly larger than the others, but each of the villages will have a centre. And each of them will include workspace, co-work space, industrial, commercial, as well as surrounded by residential and educational and open space and community. So all of that. So every one of the 4 villages will have this hub. So there'll be working space. So my phrase about the 15-minute neighbourhood is that everybody should live within 15 minutes of everything, virtually everything that they need, so that their leisure time, their work time, their shopping, and so on. Everybody should be able to cycle to it within 15 minutes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stephen. And we had a question here. Just tell us who you are and then fire your question in.
So my name's Charles. I work for a community involvement company. So we run public consultations for developers about their planning proposals, but we also work in kind of master planning for kind of extensions to cities and towns with developers like
that's the advert, Mark. What's the question?
So It's more to this point of what is the council and developers themselves doing to kind of reach out to community groups, whether that be schools, youth groups, religious groups, to kind of help make Chelmsford and its future diverse, but also sustainable, to make it the best sense of place and place for local people where they want to live to be a successful place in the future.
I'm happy to go on that one.
Yeah, Steve?
It was we talked about how COVID forced us to change ways of working. In the past, often councils would organise village hall events where you put up posters or whatever and invite people like Andrew or whatever to come and stand there for a couple of hours and talk to usually grumpy and cross residents who come along and say, "Whoa," as you were saying earlier, "you're going to build all over." You know. And obviously COVID forced us to do things differently, and both the county council and the city council have been conducting online consultations. So for example, the public consultation on the North East bypass had a much more demographically representative consultation profile than any other consultation. Normally, people who come to village halls are by definition people who've got time on their hands, which by definition tends to be older people, either retired or nearly retired, people who haven't got to work 8 to 12 hours a day in the city or somewhere else and or have children and so on. So consultations in village halls are not representative. Online consultations have actually been much more representative. We haven't cracked it because normally people who take part in consultations are the ones who've got an axe to grind and they want to complain about something rather than participate in an open manner. And if you've got any bright ideas on how to engage, motivate, mobilise the slightly disengaged, you know, that we want to hear from them as well as the ones with axe to grind.
Well, there's a conversation for you to have in the networking session afterwards. And I think we've got a connection for Alison as well with the co-working group on and perhaps some research that you can tie in together. But we're going to move on now to the final part of our discussion, which is to talk to Nick Evely about the other opportunities that Chelmsford has to offer. So we've heard a bit about the garden community, but what else is on the plate for our audience, Nick? And how, as a council, are you going to unlock the capacity for responsibly?
All right, thank you. Well, I think we've heard quite a lot this evening about place shaping, about trust and relationships, and those are all extremely key in growing Chelmsford. Before I talk about some of the development opportunities, and I think we've got 9 up on the screen, but there are quite a few more. There are lots of things happening in Chelmsford that I think are worth mentioning. And I know we've heard from Vision, but we've also got Patch in Chelmsford, who have just celebrated a year in Chelmsford in terms of co-working space. It's worth saying that pre-COVID, we had 15,000 people commute from Chelmsford to London, but we had 30,000 people coming in to Chelmsford. So a significant number of people coming in to serve the businesses within Chelmsford. We've got, up at Bewley Park, we've got the first mainline station in the eastern region for over 100 years. So Chelmsford is beginning to grow and be shaped. And that's incredibly important in terms of the opportunities. What we've got on the screen here are 9 possible opportunities within Chelmsford. There are a number of others in the pipeline as well, which I can't comment on this evening, but there are other projects that we have in the pipeline which we'd be delighted to talk to you about once we've firmed them up a little bit more. But in terms of the key sites, North Chelmsford, there's 120,000 square metres of commercial space that's going to be in North Chelmsford in 4 different zones. We've got the Meadows shopping centre, which Dominus have purchased, but there can be commercial space within that. We've got Chelmsford Waterside, which is going to have our old gasworks site, which Chelmsford owns, Chelmsford City Council owns, which can have up to 1,000 new properties plus commercial space. We've got land at East Chelmsford where there's potential for new properties but also commercial space. And if anybody wants an old Grade 2 listed building, we've got Shire Hall, which I know the County Council would love somebody to turn into a commercial space. It's a prime building at the top of the High Street in the city centre. Chelmsford are investing heavily in its public realm to make Chelmsford a destination for people to come and live and work and do business. So we'd really be delighted, both myself, the economic development team, our planners, our councillors, to talk to you about opportunities in more detail, because we believe that Chelmsford is a really thriving place to come. Just out of interest, prime office accommodation in Chelmsford is around £30 a square foot. In the city, it's about £81 a square foot, and in the West End, it's £121 a square foot. We're only 30 minutes by train to Liverpool Street. So actually, it's easier to get from London, Liverpool Street to Chelmsford than it is to get across from Fulham to London, Liverpool Street. So why not come and invest in Chelmsford? It's a fantastic location, and there are lots of opportunities here.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nick. Does anyone want to ask any question of our panel before we close? Yes, Richard.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Toby. My name's Richard Davidson. I'm from Wilmot Dixon, a contractor and a development partner, but I'm also a governor of Chelmsford College. And we haven't heard much in this session about how these growth opportunities are going to inspire young people to stay in Chelmsford, and also how the council maybe can encourage more links between the businesses and the college. That's how I got drafted in, and Andy convinced me last year to become a governor and also be a business advisor, and I've also done the same with ARU. So maybe just to explore that a bit more about, this is a great opportunity for business, for growth, for the city, but it's also about the young people and people who want to change careers, and we really need to, if you want to grow, we need to support those careers. So you can probably all answer those questions.
Thanks, Richard. I'm going to split that into two. I'm going to ask Andrew first, perhaps surprisingly. With your garden community, are you doing any work with local children to talk to them about the future that you're currently building for them? Is that within the developer's remit?
Yes, and Jeremy's nodding at me to tell me we are. So, I mean, so Chelmsford Garden Community includes the existing areas of Channels and Bewley as well. So in Bewley, we've got the first through school within Essex, and as part of that, and as part of and the private school next to it, and as part of engagement, as part of the master planning work, I'll pick up on the other point that was earlier. There's been a whole range of community engagement for all these different topics, which have included the schools as part of that, understanding some of those demands and challenges. Also through our partner L&Q, some of their networks in terms of the housing association side. Getting into school, I mean, I've done something similar. I chair Multi Academy Trust, and thinking about how you engage through the schools as part of designing new places is really interesting. We've done a lot in some of our estates in London that we're redeveloping, where you are moving communities around as part of that, and actually helping them understand, helping them develop, and actually thinking about, well, actually there are training courses that you can take on as part of that, part of your, whether that's part of the Section 106 agreement, part of the social value aspect, or just one of the things that developers do. One of the things that we do in terms of our subcontractors is generally require them to have a certain number of apprenticeships and training courses as part of that, which is a way of engaging back with, the 16-year-olds, as it were, to get them training up within the construction industry to therefore hopefully work on the places that they will then actually be living in.
Thanks, Andrew. And then perhaps to the meat of the question, which was around the specifically links between businesses and the college.
Yeah, and it's a really great question, because it's really, really important that to make sure that the workforce that we're training for the future actually has jobs that workforce can go into. So there's absolutely no point if we are, as a society, training lots of people to go into a particular profession, which by the time they get trained up in it might be obsolete, or should we say less desirable for the economy. So it's really important. I'm really sorry, I'm going to come back to that whole relationships thing again, and working and making sure that people are talking to each other. So businesses need to express very clearly, what their plans are for the future. We need to understand which direction they're heading in, so that we can understand what's needed for their workforce. What's coming up in the pipeline. there's lots of big construction projects going on in the country at the moment, or certainly planned. Whether they go ahead after tomorrow's budget is a slightly different matter. But, things like HS2s, things like the Lower Thames Crossing, we're building, or at least we did have in the pipeline, whether that's still going to go ahead, I don't know, things like new nuclear power stations, which will take huge resources. So what's the plan for those? When are they going to start to be constructed, and what do we need there? So obviously we're going to need engineers, and we're going to need people, we're going to need plumbers and electricians, and we're going to need logistics planners, and we're going to need, but then we're going to need the houses for the workforce that are going to be, nuclear power stations take decades to build sometimes, so we're going to need places for those people to live around it, but those people are going to need to get their hair cut in that place, and they're going to need to have a chippy near them, and they're going to need all these kind of things which all need to be planned in. But we need to be able to understand that in the first place. But it's no good the council just understanding it. What are we going to do about it? We don't run further education or higher education. We don't run schools. So we need to talk to ARU, and we need to talk to Writtle College, and we need to talk to Chelmsford College, and we need to make sure that they're putting on the courses that then lead to a workforce which delivers the things that we want to deliver at the time when we want them to deliver. So it's back to that communication thing again as well. And if I may just go slightly off topic for a second, because when we were talking about relationships earlier, and I talked about things that are happening, that the council's involved in, and what I didn't talk about actually, and there's a team here which I want to mention because they're from the Business Improvement District, and that's a group of people who are working very, very hard in the centre of Chelmsford to make sure that there are events and things going on in the centre of Chelmsford which bring people into the city centre, and that is incredibly important. And if any of you have a little ballot paper to decide whether you want to re-elect them, I'm going to be a bit of a plug to get the Business Improvement District re-elected. They have done some amazing things, and things which keep our city vibrant, and that's really important. Don't think that if the Business Improvement District disappears that the council can take over. It can't. We don't have the capacity to do it. If you want to see things like the concrete canvas where our city has been brightened up by some amazing artwork, and you want to see monsters on top of buildings where even grown-ups are standing in front of them and taking pictures, we need things like the Business Improvement District to continue. So I just wanted a bit of a plug for them, and I can see Sarah smiling, so hopefully she'll have made her happy. But that is, again, it's about us working in partnership, and the council works in partnership with them as well to stretch the things that they're working on. So I just wanted to, slightly off topic, I hope Richard doesn't mind me going off topic with that. Thanks.
It's all part of the urban fabric, isn't it? Stephen.
Yes, hi Richard. Thank you for your question. Skills shortages is one of the big things that worries me, as Marie said, about all the projects which are going on and our capacity or not to deliver them. I mean, just to build all the houses that are in the local plans, we need 30,000 young people to go into the construction industry. And that's before we talk about all the other jobs that the industries that we need. As I said, we're sitting in one fabulous university, but as I mentioned earlier, we have another one. The Vice Chancellor of Writtle University College is here as well. And Nick and I have met with Tim a number of times to talk about how Writtle University College can grow its offer so that we can train up new skills, look at the new technology courses, and all the things that we do need, the skills that we need our young people to have in future. Another example of partnership working is with the college, Chelmsford College. We're working with Chelmsford College to upgrade the leisure facilities at what's known Dovedale Sports Centre, which is joint use between the college and local residents via the council. So we're keen to work with the college at that level as well, so that we improve our leisure offer. But you're absolutely right. And we had some fantastic events planned for young people, everybody, particularly young people in 2020, but that was one of the many things that sadly got lost due to COVID. But that was supposed to be the year of science, technology, engineering, arts and maths, which we launched in January 2020 and then had to close it all down 6 weeks later. Well, a lot of it went online, but we did unfortunately miss that. But that was going to be a great opportunity. Our skills festival, which we hope to bring back in July next year, which will be offering all Year 8s an opportunity to meet local businesses, particularly those in the tech sector, up at Highlands Park, to encourage the Year 8s before they choose their GCSE subjects to choose STEM subjects. So we are keen, as we've said throughout this evening, we as the City Council, to work with partners to address those big challenges. So to you, Richard, anybody in the room, if there's something which we haven't addressed this evening, please come and talk to us shortly.
Great. And of course, in getting those 30,000 young people to build the next generation of Chelmsford, we're going to be competing with Ukraine, where an entire country is going to have to be rebuilt at some point in the relatively near future. So we've got to make it as exciting as possible for young people to want to rebuild, to build and improve the place that they grew up in and that they live in.
Can I just add a kind of a point that was being made earlier, how staff are re-evaluating where they want to work, and because unemployment is so low, obviously they can, and therefore it's about the work. We always talk about work-life balance, but it really is about that, because young people in particular have choices and opportunities, and they won't be in the same career all their lives. So it's got to be about the place where they live and work, as well as the actual job that they're doing, which is why, again, we think Chelmsford is a great place to live and work, and we hope you'll come here.
Well, this conversation, I think, could run and run, and we softened you up a bit, and we've got you a bit engaged and talking to us a bit, but we've got to end somewhere, and I don't want to come between you and the opportunity to talk to the council and its partners and each other about the tantalising morsels that we put up on the screen, the schemes that the council's bringing forward. Nick mentioned there are 9, I think he said, that are in the kind of pipeline that...
about, but there are others in the pipeline.
Others that you might be able to have a sort of informal word about over a coffee next. So we don't want to come between you and that opportunity. So we're going to end this part of the discussion, but let the conversation continue for the next hour or so, during which all of our panelists will be really delighted to follow up on these themes and explore them further with you in more detail. So in the meantime, if you could join me in thanking our fantastic panel for sharing their insights and outlooks with us today. Thank you very much indeed, panel. Brilliant. So that's thank you to Nick Evely and Councillor Marie Goldman from Chelmsford City Council, and to Stephen Robinson, the leader, and thank you to Alison Hurst and Mina Lamy from Anglia Ruskin University, and thank you to Andrew Taylor of Countryside, both for the contribution to the conversation and for your sponsorship of the event, which has brought us all together this evening. Thank you also to Invest in Chelmsford for organising us all, and for my fantastic team at Three Fox, who've got my undying gratitude forever for all their work that they put into this. And thank you, audience, as well, for your attention, but also for your contribution to the conversation this afternoon. I hope that you're now irrevocably committed to investing and developing responsibly in Chelmsford, and that you can make use of the rest of the evening to shape those plans. Thank you.